from 8 to 12, 8 to 5, 8 to what's the schedule like in this machine that we'll call college football?
Man, it's just different. It depends. At Washington State, I'd like to get there at 6:30, which kind of put me. The only person who beat me to the office is usually the director of player personnel. He's a machine. Rob Schlager is just awesome. But try to get there early, um, and try to leave by 6:30. So I usually try to put in a 12-hour day. Right now at Rice, I got here kind of at a weird time where you know everybody was out at camps, and now everybody's kind of on vacation for July. But I'm still kind of going in and out of the office, just trying to get organized. And I really just want to be ready for when August shows up and August it's time. I'm ready to go. So I'm kind of using this time to get ahead. I will find some time to go home and have a little bit of vacation, but like I said, just mainly trying to stay organized. But usually a day for me, like I'd show up and make a checklist. I said, these are all the things I want to get accomplished today. Uh, and usually it was the first thing I would do was set our graphics for the week. So because I was in charge of communications, so we had like two graphics that would go out every week, and then we'd have one mailer, like a physical mailer that would go out as well. So I'd have to get with our creative department. They'd have like a big Google Drive of things, and I just had to communicate with them which ones I'm pulling and which ones I'm taking. Um, and then I would set. This is all at the beginning of the week stuff. So usually like a Monday, I would set our ABC list, which is so it's can be called the ABC list for different reasons. It's like the A communicator, B communicator, C communicator. So it's like your position coach, your area coach, your coordinator. I like to call it the always be recruiting list. So it's just me basically telling these coaches who they need to talk to, who we need to be touching on, who's on the hot list, who's our top prospects, and making sure and ensuring that these kids are getting talked to at least once a week. Some kids almost every other day, depending on where they're at in our board. So that was kind of some things that I was in charge of. Part of my day would be spent evaluating prospects in the state of Texas. That was kind of my role there. And then every other week, I would meet with each position coach for about an hour and go through their board and, all right, who's a kid of importance? Who do we need to touch on? What does this kid need? Does this kid need a custom video? Does he need a graphic? What are things that are going on in life? Always running the state track meet. Let's make him a congratulatory thing because he's at the straight track meet. So it's just meeting with these coaches and helping them get their thoughts organized so that we can know and have a plan of attack on how we're going to recruit said kids.
Yeah, I love this, man. I mean, I'm not gonna call it nerdy stuff, but it's like this fun to me, Coach. Let me ask you this, Coach. How big is that staff? With those moving parts, is it a group of 10 people, 20 people, 30 people? How many people are a part of it?
Like in the whole entire staff?
But as far as football, but recruiting wise, and as far as that.
Okay, recruiting. So, typical Power Five. At least what we had in Washington State, we had a director of player personnel, a director of scouting, director of recruiting, director of on-campus recruiting, and then we had 3 scouts. So that put us at 7. Here at Rice, and they just recently made these additions. We're trying to be pretty comparable to a Power 5 recruiting department. So there's director of player personnel, director of recruiting and recruiting operations, director of on-campus recruiting, and then we just hired 2 new recruiting analysts, and we consider our director of creative to be part of the recruiting department because he runs our Twitter and he's really involved. So it's about 6 people. So we're right there.
Okay, right at it. So you get to Rice, like I said, known as a very, very good, educational institution, not just sports, but education. What's your goals? How do you want to build this thing, Coach? Where do you want to take this thing?
I got you, man. I just want to take it to the best it could be. I kind of rolled into a good situation. I showed up. We had 9 commits. We're currently at 12 with hoping we get a couple more kids in the boat by next week, which would be a very solid point for us to be going into the season. I think it's all about finding the right kids and not really being so concerned about rankings and hype and stars and stuff like that. It was pretty similar to Washington State, kind of the kids we recruited. It's just finding the developmental kids that may be a 2-3 star kid getting recruited out of high school, But by the time they're juniors and seniors in college, those kids are going to be 4 or 5 stars. Best example was a kid at Washington State, and I love this kid to death. He was so great. His name was Abraham Lucas. Abe Lucas out of high school was 6'6", probably like 240 pounds. Looked like he played tight end. They recruited him to play offensive line. So like I said, he came in 6'6", 240 pounds, obviously a project. Fast forward 4 years later, he's 6'6" and some change, 320 pounds, like 10 to 15% body fat, ran a 4.97 at the NFL Combine, and is drafted in the 3rd round to the Seattle Seahawks as an offensive.
Big time. Wow.
So being able to project and see those kids, like you take a big tight end and you turn him into a tackle. I call it +1 recruiting, and a lot of people already do it, but you take a strong safety and you turn him into a will backer, so that by the time he's a junior, senior, he's your Mike backer. You take some corners who are naturally a little more athletic and you turn them into a free safety. You take a big high school defensive end that maybe is not as twitchy and maybe a little stiff, but still very athletic, and you bump them in and you make them a 3 technique. You take your stand-up outside backers that are long and twitchy, and you teach them to put their hand in the dirt, and you put some weight on them, and that's how you get those all-conference defensive ends. That's just something I've always been about. That's something I've always instilled, and that's definitely something that I'll probably always do kind of going forward until you get to that level where, you're at whatever university and you can get whatever kid you want because you're a 4 or 5 star. You know what I mean? Recruit.
And I'm pretty sure it's all over, but any particular areas you want to kind of hit when it comes to recruiting, or you just want all this whole thing? And within that context, anywhere outside of the state?
I got you. Well, being the way that we are in terms of academic school, I mean, you can kind of recruit nationally, really and truly. But, I mean, we'd be silly if we didn't attack Texas. I don't want to leave any stone unturned in this state. I mean, I feel like Houston and Dallas, those metroplexes need to be attacked with the entire staff. I think the other parts of Texas can be divvied up. And then I think the other places outside of Texas just depends on what kind of relationships you have within your staff. I mean, like our offensive coordinator has a lot of ties to Hawaii, so he can recruit Hawaii. He can recruit the West Coast because he spent time in California. You look at like our special teams coordinator, Coach Mono, he spent a lot of time on the East Coast, so he can recruit the East Coast. So it's just you want to recruit to your strengths, to your ties and stuff like that, but it's also just kind of finding kids that fit the mold of Rice.
A few more questions. We're going to wrap it up. Hour 20 minutes in. How are you learning right now? What's your ways of learning and continue to progress from a mental side? And then how would you construct a high school program now that you've been at the college level? Is there any knowledge that you've learned since then that can transfer to the high school game?
Gotcha. So I continue learning by doing stuff